everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at a really interesting article about Pakistan.
Interesting.
It's called Pakistan's Partition, Not Independence. And it really gets us thinking about what Independence Day on August 14th
Okay.
actually means
What does that actually mean?
for Pakistan.
Yeah.
So, what really stood out to me was how the article starts off, like super celebratory, right?
Yeah.
Talking about all the hard work and the struggle to create a separate Muslim state.
Sure. Yeah, it highlights the contributions of those major figures.
Exactly.
Like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan,
Right.
Allama Muhammad Iqbal,
Yeah.
and of course the Quaid-Azam Muhammad Jinnah.
But then it takes this kind of a sharp turn.
Yeah, almost like it's setting you up for this triumphant narrative.
Right.
And then it kind of throws you for a loop with this term,
Yes.
elitocracy,
Elitocracy.
which the article argues is what replaced British rule.
Yeah. So can you break down, like, what exactly elitocracy is and how it applies to Pakistan?
Sure. So elitocracy basically describes a system where a small elite group holds a disproportionate amount of power and resources,
Okay.
and they often operate
Yeah.
above the law,
Above the law.
at the expense of the majority.
Interesting.
So the article argues that despite gaining independence from the British,
Right.
Pakistan essentially ended up under the control of a new ruling class,
A new ruling class.
made up of powerful families,
Yeah.
politicians, businessmen,
Okay.
landlords,
Okay.
religious figures, and, even high-ranking officials in the civil and military bureaucracy.
It's a pretty bold statement to say that Pakistan's 76-year history has been marked by elite rule
Yeah, I mean,
rather than true independence.
it really does make you question, like, what does independence actually mean?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really challenges how we typically think about Pakistan's journey. Absolutely. And the article doesn't just throw this term around. It really digs deep into how this elite class has shaped.
Or you could even say misshaped Pakistan's development.
Okay.
And one of the most striking examples it uses is the state of education in Pakistan.
Yeah, the article points out that only 1 million out of 4 million children in Pakistan
Wow.
actually complete 12 years of education,
Right.
which is...
A pretty alarming statistic.
Yeah.
What's the connection between that and this idea of elitocracy?
Right. What's that connection?
Well, think about it. If a large part of the population doesn't have access to quality education, they're less likely to be informed,
Right.
right? They're less likely to be able to, like, critically analyze the system
Yeah.
or to challenge the way things are.
Yeah.
And that, in turn, allows the elite to maintain their control.
Yeah, I see.
It's almost like a cycle of disadvantage that benefits.
Where people are already at the top.
Right. So it's not just about limited opportunities. Like,
Totally.
they're deliberately trying to control the flow of knowledge.
Yeah, almost like ultimately
A
power.
strategic move
Yeah.
to stay in power.
Yeah. Okay. And this manipulation of power goes beyond education.
Right. It doesn't stop there.
The article also highlights Pakistan's taxation system.
Yes.
And they even quote the former FBR chairman Shahbar Zadie,
Okay.
who claimed that, get this, the lower and middle classes pay 200% more in taxes than the elite.
Seriously?
Yes.
200% more.
Yeah.
That just doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't seem fair at all.
That's exactly the point the article's trying to make. This unequal burden of taxation just reinforces the existing economic disparities.
Right.
It allows the elite to keep accumulating more wealth,
Right.
which is keeping to formiate everyone else is struggling.
Yeah, it's like a rigged game where the rules are designed to keep the same people winning.
Exactly.
And this manipulation, this rigged game, it seems to impact every aspect of Pakistani society.
He does.
The article even brings up the justice system
Okay.
and argues that it mainly serves the elite.
Interesting.
There's this really powerful quote in the article that says a brigadier wife,
Okay.
a secretary's son, a minister's,
Chakadar.
and a businessman's munitia are more powerful than the Chief Justice of Pakistan.
Wow.
It really highlights this idea that there's like a different set of rules for the elite.
A different set of rules.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this lack of justice, this feeling that people in power are above the law, it erodes public trust in institutions.
Yeah.
If people feel like the system is rigged against them, why should they believe in it?
It creates this sense of disillusionment resentment.
Definitely.
And the article uses a very specific event to illustrate this, the events of May 9th, 2023.
Okay, so this is where things get even more interesting.
For those who might not remember, can you give us a little context on what happened on May 9th?
Sure. So on May 9th, there were these widespread protests and unrest in Pakistan. And it all started after the arrest of a really prominent political figure.
Yeah.
The article uses this event to highlight what it sees as this, blatant disparity in how the law is applied.
Right.
And this, almost hierarchy of respect for certain symbols.
Oh, you mean like the part about how the damage to the Jinnah house during the protests sparked so much outrage?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The article points out how this reaction almost overshadowed any concern for, damage done to mosques, temples, churches, or even people's homes.
Oh.
It's the sanctity of this one historical building became more important than the well-being of actual people.
It's a really interesting point. It's like there's this unspoken hierarchy of respect, and at the very top are the symbols and institutions connected to power and the elite.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And it goes on to list all these really serious allegations about the government's crackdown on the protests.
Okay, like what kinds of allegations?
We're talking night raids,
Yeah.
violations of privacy, imprisonment of minors, even the abduction of women.
Regardless of anyone's political stance, if these allegations are true, they point to a blatant disregard for human rights.
And for basic due process. The article argues that these events contribute to this perception of elite impunity in Pakistan.
Elite impunity.
Yeah, the idea that the elite can pretty much act without facing any consequences.
While ordinary citizens bear the brunt of the law.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, justice is blind, doesn't really apply when you're dealing with the powerful.
Well, that's a good way to put it. This lack of accountability at the top really has this corrosive effect on society as a whole.
How so?
Well, it breeds cynicism, resentment, and eventually it can lead to instability.
So it sounds like the article is arguing that just because Pakistan gained independence from colonial rule doesn't mean that its people are truly free and equal.
That's the core argument.
Yeah.
True independence requires more than just replacing one set of rulers with another.
Okay, so it's about dismantling those systems of elite control.
Right, and creating a society where everyone is equal before the law and has a real shot at success.
That makes sense. But is there any hope for change? Does the article offer any solutions?
It does, and it ends on a somewhat hopeful note. It highlights this rising awareness and what it calls the eagle spirit.
Eagle spirit.
Emerging among Pakistani youth.
So despite this bleak picture, the article sees potential for change coming from the younger generation.
That's right. They're becoming more informed, more engaged, more willing to question the way things are.
So their energy and idealism could be a real driving force for change.
Absolutely.
So real independence might not come from the top down, but from the bottom up.
Driven by the people themselves.
And especially the youth.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
And it ties into this bigger theme we've been talking about.
What's that?
The nature of power.
Okay.
And how it works within societies.
We've seen how the elite in Pakistan, according to the article, maintain their control.
Yeah, through things like limiting education, manipulating the tax system, and basically acting like they're above the law.
But what about everyone else, the ordinary people? What can they do to challenge these structures?
The article points to a few key things: awareness, engagement, and a willingness to question the dominant narrative.
So by understanding how these power systems work, and by holding those in power accountable, ordinary citizens, especially young people, can really make a difference.
They can be agents of change.
So it's not just about complaining or feeling powerless. It's about taking action, demanding better, and creating a future where everyone has a chance to succeed.
That's a great way to put it.
This idea of active citizenship, where individuals understand their own power to shape their society, seems crucial to achieving true independence.
It is.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the justice system in Pakistan. We were just talking about the justice system and how the article says it really only works for the elite.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any truth to that?
Well, the article's claim that you can basically buy justice in Pakistan is a serious one. And it's backed up with a ton of stories and examples. It highlights how rich and connected people just seem to sail through the legal system.
Right.
While everyone else faces all these obstacles. And they often end up at a disadvantage.
It's pretty unsettling to think that justice is something you can buy instead of a fundamental right.
I agree. And the article says that this two-tiered justice system,
One for the elite and one for everybody else.
yeah,
It just leads to people not trusting the rule of law.
exactly. And that can really damage the fabric of society.
Because if people don't believe the system is fair, they're not going to cooperate with it, right?
They're less likely to report crimes
Yeah.
or to believe that problems can actually be solved fairly.
And that lack of trust can have huge consequences, like more vigilantism, a breakdown of order, even violence.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
So what can we do about this? I mean, the article talks about the eagle spirit of young people.
Right.
But can they really change a system that seems so set in its ways?
The article doesn't give us any easy answers, but it stresses that raising awareness, demanding accountability, and pushing for reforms are important first steps.
Okay.
And it also talks about how technology and social media can empower people to document injustice, connect with each other, and push for change.
So even if traditional institutions aren't delivering justice, the article sees potential in grassroots movements and digital platforms
Absolutely.
to challenge the status quo.
The idea of citizens holding those in power accountable is crucial for any society that wants to be truly independent and just.
Yeah, it's like that saying, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance.
Exactly.
We can't just assume that independence will automatically lead to freedom and equality for all.
It takes work. We have to stay vigilant and challenge those who abuse their power.
So what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is this: never take your freedom for granted, whether you're in Pakistan or anywhere else. True independence demands active citizenship, a commitment to justice, and a willingness to hold those in power accountable.
That's a powerful message, and I hope it inspires our listeners to think critically about how power works in their own lives and communities.
Me too. Because in the end, the pursuit of a just and equitable society is a journey we're all on together.
Well said. This has been such a fascinating deep dive into Pakistan's history and what true independence really means.
It's been great talking about these important issues with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration and discovery. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep fighting for a better world.